Abydos, Egypt, February 2011. 300 miles south of Cairo, looters target what was once the most sacred site to the ancient Egyptians during the time of the pharaohs. It was here that Egypt's first rulers were buried, and the earliest forms of hieroglyphs were found, as well as an inscription bearing the names and chronology of the first kings of ancient Egypt. Abydos was considered sacred to the god Osiris, lord of the dead, and Egypt's first otherworldly ruler. According to ancient legends, his dismembered head was buried at the site.
So who was Osiris? Was he simply an ancestor of the ancient Egyptians, or was he a god that descended to earth, from the sky world? Obviously, we cannot say today, but we know he was said to have existed in an age that was known as Zep Tepi, the first time.
In the 13th century BC, the pharaoh Seti I was building his temple here in Abydos, when, according to some accounts, he had an encounter with the god Osiris.
When King Seti was building his temple, he had a dream in which the Egyptian god Osiris appeared to him. And he told Seti that if he was to dig behind his temple location, that he would find something of enormous significance. Seti digs 40 feet beneath the temple and finds the tomb of Osiris.
For hundreds of years, no such tomb was known to exist in Abydos. But at the turn of the 20th century, archaeologists digging behind the temple of Seti I unearthed a massive underground structure consisting of granite and sandstone blocks, some weighing nearly 60 tons. The Osirian, as it is now known, was found buried under 40 feet of silt. And ancient astronaut theorists are convinced that further excavations would reveal something much more profound hidden within it.
The interesting thing about it is that on the exterior wall of the Temple of Seti is inscribed what is called the head or tower of Osiris. What looks like some kind of an ancient antenna type of a device. It's clearly technological or mechanical looking. According to legend, it has been buried and is awaiting rediscovery.
Our founder claims this right here is an embodied form of the violet ray spectrum.
Tap in and tune in Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Grand Rising with ChristoLight, your sacred space for discovering the Ascended Masters in crystal healing. Ashe.
You need to hear this if you crave meaning at sunrise. I'm Marcus ChristoLight. Tonight, we meet Osiris, Father. Tonight, we meet Osiris, King. Tonight, we meet Osiris, Cosmic Mirror. Myth as mirror. Osiris teaches how loss. Myth as mirror. Osiris teaches how leadership. Myth as mirror. Osiris teaches how rebirth shape us. Join me as we map Orion's constellation to soul purpose. Watch Isis's twin flame light return the self. Grand Rising with ChristoLight, where ancient story guides modern awakening. Hit subscribe and rise with us.
Hello, hello. Grand day, everyone. Just kind of bear with me as the technology catches up with the frequencies. I want to wish you all a grand day, grand rising. And thank you for archetypes, different roles, and different attributes that the archetypes and beings of multidimensional light represent in this universal consciousness that we are all connected to as one. And we've been deep diving, as last week we went into and talked about some key figures like Thoth the Atlantean. And we had Cricket the Gift join us to talk about and break down the wisdom and teachings of Thoth. And then we also talked about Mother Isis as well. And that was a beautiful episode last week. And we had 3 different guests, 3 different sisters join us to share and show the potency and the different symbolisms of connecting with the Mother Isis. The origin, the history, and the archetype of Isis's twin flame, divine union partner, the divine masculine principle, Osiris. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up our share screen text, and we're gonna go ahead and get started and dive in to this knowledge. So enjoy, grab your coffee, your tea, burn some sage, Palo Santo, maybe grab green crystal that you want to connect with for this live, and get ready to meditate, get ready to connect, and get ready to tap into some spiritual energy. All right. So Osiris is one of the most important figures, or gods, if you would like to say, in ancient Egypt or Kemet. The origin of Osiris is obscure. He was a local god of Osiris in Lower Egypt. And may have been a personification of the underworld or fertility. So by about 2400 BC, Osiris clearly played a double role. He was a god of fertility and the embodiment of the dead and resurrected king. So this dual role was in turn combined with the Egyptian concept of divine kingship, named Osiris, god of the underworld. And the dead king's son, the living king, was identified with Horus, a god of the sky. Osiris and Horus were thus father and son. The goddess Isis was the mother of the king, and was thus the mother and consort of Osiris. The god Seth was considered the murderer of Osiris and the adversary of Horus. According to the form of the myth reported by the Greek author Plutarch, Osiris was slain and drowned by Seth, who tore the corpse into 14 pieces and flung them over Egypt. Eventually, Isis and her sister Nephthys, who we'll be diving into tomorrow, found and buried all the pieces except the phallus, thereby giving new life to Osiris, who thenceforth remained in the underworld as ruler and judge. His son Horus successfully fought against Seth, avenging Osiris and becoming the new king of Egypt. So keep in mind as we read these, this is symbolic of our own inner consciousness and journey as a being. And it's also representing that sometimes when we get caught in our aggressive lower nature and we get stuck in that energy and we stay in that energy, which is Seth energy, what can happen is we can start to break down and begin to destroy ourselves. And through that, and then have to rebirth ourselves by having more feminine energy to rehabilitate ourselves, which would be the Nephthys and Isis. So then continuing into the story, it's our wounds, it is our negative thoughts, it is our anger, it's our pain, and things of that nature. So Osiris, being the lord of the underworld, that archetype and energy is the fatherly energy that helps us to know if we are ready, if we are vibrationally embodied and capable of being as light as a feather to be able to ascend into our next embodiment. So, from the underworld, from sprouting vegetation to the annual flood of the Nile River. From about 2000 BC onward, it was believed that every man, not just the deceased kings, became associated with Osiris at death. This identification with Osiris, however, did not imply resurrection, for even Osiris did not rise from the dead. Instead, it signifies the renewal of life, both in the next world and through one's descendants on earth. In this universalized form, Osiris's cult spread through Egypt, often joining the cults of local fertility and underworld deities. So one thing we got to think about when it comes to resurrection and transformation is that in order for us to embody, to shift, or to move into a new phase, a new embodiment of who we are, or a new version of yourself, then we have to go through the process of our purification. We gotta go through the releasing process. And that is our resurrection. It's the old energies. It's when we release the bondage and baggage, and we resurrect and rise into a lighter vibrational form of art. We got to face the things that are in our underworld that are keeping us anchored down in the densities to continue to rise. And this can be mentally, emotionally, and physically. Then it can also be around you. Relationships, places, habits, consumptions. We got to resurrect ourselves by releasing and letting go of these things that are causing poison, that are toxic for our energy field. So it doesn't have to always be about dying in this body, in this life, and then moving on to the next. It could also be about going through the process of resurrection of our own mental health, our emotional health in this current life. But then it can also be about preparing for the next life as well, as a lot of ancient civilizations used their actions in this life very consciously to make sure that they were karmically and dharmically setting themselves up to have a more abundant and fortunate next incarnation or next life, whether it's on this planet, another planet, or in a different universe. If that rebirth in the next life will be gained by following Osiris was maintained through certain cult forms. In the Middle Kingdom, 1938 to 1630 BC, the gods' festivals consisted of processions and nocturnal rites, and were celebrated at the temple of Abydos, where Osiris had assimilated the very ancient god of the dead, Kenti and Muntu. This name, meaning foremost of the Westerners, was adopted by Osiris, as in epithet. Because the festivals took place in the open, public participation was permitted. By the early 2nd millennium BCE, it had become fashionable to be buried along the processional road at Abydos, or to erect a cenotaph there as a representative of the dead. Osiris festivals, symbolically reenacting the god's fate, were celebrated annually in various towns throughout Egypt. A central feature of the festivals during the late period in the shape of Osiris, filled with soil. The mold was moistened with the water of the Nile and sown with grain. Later, the sprouting grain symbolized the vital strength of Osiris. At Memphis, the holy bull Apis was linked with Osiris, becoming Osiris Apis, which eventually became the name of the Hellenistic god Serapis. Greco-Roman authors connected Osiris with the god Okar, an ancient Memphite god of the dead. The oldest known depiction of Osiris dates to about 200 or 2300 BC, but representation of him are rare before the New Kingdom, 1539-1075 BC, when he was shown in a archaizing form as a mummy with his arms crossed on his breast, one hand holding a crook, the other a flail. On his head was the Atef crown, composed of the white crown of Upper Egypt with 2 ostrich feathers. And if you guys want to take a look at this picture, this is a depiction of Isis and Osiris. And you can see him have the crook and the flail. And then you can see that Isis is holding the Ankh of life, which means she's a bearer of life, eternal life, since she's a feminine. She is a carrier and a birthing portal for eternal. And then along with that, she has the bird in her other hand, which means she is the embodiment of wisdom, because she is the divine feminine embodied. So the Ankh means that she is carrying eternal life as the portal of life. And then the bird in the other hand is her giving with her giving hand or masculine hand, the bird, which is giving of wisdom, while she receives in her left hand eternal life force from spirit. And that shows you the balance of how Isis, the mother, has the ability of, and then giving tangible wisdom into this realm, into this earth, for us to receive. And then Osiris is over here. All right. Let's continue. As far as like Ascended Masters as well. And also too, if you guys have anything to add about Osiris, feel free to put it in the comments, as you are always free to share any knowledge or information as well. Okay, so Osiris, from this standpoint, Osiris from decree to Osiris ray meditation and enlightenment ray qualities. Twin flame of Isis, etheric office. He holds the Kohan of the 9th ray of meditation. He is the hierarch of a sun with Isis embodiments. Osiris in Lemuria was also King Tut. Wow. That's very interesting. So with that being said, let's check out what the 9th ray is. 9th divine ray of light. And this is how you really just get deeper and deeper into knowledge, is when you start seeing things, you go into exploring what that is as well. And then you just start going down the rabbit hole, so to say. And you start uncovering a bunch of wonderful knowledge and information to educate yourself. So let's see what the divine ray or the 9th ray of light is. It looks like it's also associated with Lady Mary as well. So the 9th divine ray of light is a sacred frequency, and esoteric spiritual teachings often linked to soul awakening, inner joy, and divine healing. It is formerly governed by Lady Mary or Mother Mary. It is associated with blue and green vibration, symbolizes soul exploration, inner fulfillment, and spiritual expansion. This hue blends the clarity of blue with the nurturing warmth of green. representing both vision and compassion. Then it also mentions Isis as well as working with this energy. It's also linked with enlightenment, and it is overseen by Seraphina Marcus. Interesting. And then it's also held with Archangel Chamuel. And again, it's about higher consciousness and spiritual transformation, which makes complete sense with the Osiris archetype. Because when you think about resurrection and transformation, in order to embody that and do that within your consciousness, then you got to have a awareness and relationship with the higher consciousness to really understand that you can spiritually transform, that you're safe to, that you're guided to, that you are protected to, and that you are also the innate eternal force making itself transform into a new form. But you're not really aware of that. You don't really hold that awareness inside of your ego, inside of your everyday consciousness, unless you apply these principles or you attune yourself and really get yourself in the embodiment of the knowing and knowledge of your eternal connection. We got to remember, we go beyond the flesh. We go beyond the material. And with that being said, when we're identifying ourselves in this journey, in this adventure, are we identifying solely as this temporary physical identity that is going to change and is changing every day and will also no longer be inhabiting in this earth realm at some point? Or are we identifying ourselves as a soul blueprint that descended and incarnated for a temporary time, that is having illusionary experiences with our free will and universal alchemy? Those are the things to think about. And if you're not in that embodiment, that awareness, that type of life, then maybe that is where we need to resurrect ourselves. Maybe we need to break down and decompose to create some new fertility and fertilization within our consciousness. So is there things that we're holding on to that's kind of like dead energy? Are there very dense blockages and pains and wounds and feelings that we're holding on to? If so, that is prime to be released and utilized as fertilization, to bring new life and to bring new light into your mind, body, emotions. So think about that and why it's worth it to face the shadows, to face the traumas, to face the wounds and the triggers, so that we can create a new dawn of light inside of our own being. And we don't have to continue to sit in cycles, in loops of the snake eating its own tail when it comes to our wounds and traumas, shadows, and other aspects that can go in the background and continue to cause us to become reactive in our everyday well-being. Beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and play another video, and this video is going to be just another exclamation and deep dive, giving more perspective about this archetype of Osiris, how you can connect with him, and the origins as well. And after that, I'm going to be oracle card for it from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, closing out the beautiful 5-minute Osiris meditation at the end of space today. So enjoy the video, and remember, feel free to comment and share your perspective as
Ancient
well.
Egyptians considered Osiris to be their god of fertility, life, agriculture, death, and resurrection. Osiris's name meant powerful or mighty, and according to tradition, he was supposed to be Egypt's first pharaoh and king. Osiris was represented by the mythical Bennu bird, which had the power to resurrect itself from ashes. His myth was incorporated into various literary genres and became the most popular and well-known tale in all of Egypt. Let's take a closer look at the myth of Osiris and examine its significance in Egyptian culture. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris was born to creator gods Geb and Nut. He was the first king to govern and rule the people of Egypt, and for this reason he was called Lord of the Earth. Osiris reigned for several years together with Isis, who was his queen and companion. Historians believe that Osiris existed as a pre-dynastic deity, as either the ruler of the underworld or a god of fertility and growth. These pre-existing stories and tales were eventually amalgamated into one coherent text called the Myth of Osiris. The myth of Osiris was transmitted from generation to generation for millennia, but took on an entirely new form when the Greeks colonized Egypt. The Greeks adapted the myth into their own context and merged the story of Osiris with that of the bull god Apis. As a result, a syncretic deity was born under the name of Serapis. During the reign of Ptolemy I, Serapis became the chief god and patron of Alexandria. In Egyptian art, Osiris was almost exclusively depicted as a youthful man with black or green skin. The green skin was to represent his deceased status, as well as his association with rebirth. Osiris wore the yetef, or crown of Upper Egypt, on his head, and carried a crook and flail in his arms, which were usually crossed in the typical mummy fashion. In some depictions, Osiris was also portrayed as a mythical ram known as Banabjed. Images on tombs and burial chambers showed Osiris as a partial mummified being, signifying his crucial role as a king of the underworld. Osiris was represented by several symbols. These included the crook and flail, Egypt's foremost symbols of royal power and authority, which also represent the agricultural fertility of the land. The Yetef crown, which features the Hedjet with an ostrich feather on either side. The so-called Dedjet pillar, an important symbol of stability and power, also believed to represent the spine of Osiris. Ostrich feathers, which signified truth and justice and symbolize his role as a just and truthful ruler. Mummy gauze, which refers to his role as a god of the underworld. His green skin, which represented his association with agriculture, rebirth, and vegetation. And finally, his black skin, which signified the fertility of the Nile River Valley. But what Osiris is mostly known for are the myths, especially the myth of Osiris and Set, which had different versions over time. The main story describes Osiris as the first king of Egypt. He was a successful king who introduced civilization and agriculture into the provinces. After doing so, he went on a long journey away from Egypt with his sister and consort Isis. After a few months, when the brother and sister returned to their kingdom, they were met by a fierce challenge. Osiris's brother Set was ready to usurp the throne, and their return hindered his plans. To prevent Osiris from ascending the throne, Set slew him and mutilated his body, chopping him up into little pieces. Isis and her son Horus decided to avenge the dead king. There was a mighty battle, but eventually Horus defeated Set. Isis then collected all of Osiris's body parts and buried them, but she kept aside his phallus, made replicas of it, and distributed them across Egypt. The replicas became important locations of shrines and centers of worship all over the Egyptian kingdom. However, there are other versions of this famous myth, one of which explains the reasons for Set's grudge against his own brother. When he was a king of all Egypt, Osiris was reportedly a remarkable ruler. However, his brother Set was always jealous of his powers and abilities. Set became even more envious when his own consort, Nephthys, fell in love with Osiris. An enraged Set couldn't contain his anger and murdered Osiris by attacking him in the form of a beast. Other accounts claim that it was by drowning him in the Nile River. Set, however, didn't stop at murder, and he further dismembered Osiris's body to assure himself of the king's demise. He then scattered every piece of the god's body in different places of the country. Isis gathered all of Osiris's body parts and put together the body of Osiris with the help of Nephthys. She then was able to resurrect him long enough to have intercourse with him. Isis then gave birth to Horus, who became the rival of Set and the rightful heir to the throne. To make things even more confusing, there is yet another version of the Osiris myth involving the Mediterranean town of Byblos. In this version, Set murdered Osiris by tricking him into a coffin and pushing him into the Nile River. The coffin floated to the land of Byblos, where it was grounded. The king of Byblos came across the coffin during one of his travels. However, he couldn't recognize it as a coffin since a tree had grown around the wood. The king of Byblos took the tree back to his kingdom, and his carpenters carved it into a pillar. The pillar, along with Osiris's hidden coffin, remained in the palace of Byblos until the arrival of Isis. When Isis reached Byblos, she appealed to the king and queen to extract the coffin from the pillar and get back her husband's body. The king and queen complied, but Set came to know of this plan and quickly obtained Osiris's body. He cut up the body into several pieces, but Isis was able to put it back and impregnate herself with Osiris's phallus. Although there are several versions of the myth of Osiris, the basic elements of the plot remain the same. Set murders his brother and usurps the throne. Isis then avenges Osiris's death by giving birth to Horus, who then challenges Set and reclaims the throne. The myth of Osiris symbolizes a battle between order and disorder. It conveys the idea of Ma'at, or the natural order of the world. This balance is constantly disrupted by unlawful acts such as Set usurping the throne and murdering Osiris. However, the myth conveys the idea that evil can never reign for long, and Ma'at will eventually be restored. This myth has also been used as a symbol of the cyclic process of birth, death, and afterlife. Osiris, as a god of the afterlife, has come to symbolize rebirth and resurrection. Due to this, many Egyptian kings have identified themselves with the Osiris myth in order to ensure reincarnation through their descendants. The myth has also reiterated the importance of being a virtuous, benevolent, and noble king. For the Egyptians, the myth of Osiris was also an important symbol of life and fertility. The floodwaters of the Nile River were associated with the bodily fluids of Osiris. The people assumed that the flood was a blessing from Osiris and enabled a rich growth of plant and animal life. The myth of Osiris first appeared in the pyramid text during the Old Kingdom, but the most complete account of the myth only appeared several years later in the Great Hymn of Osiris. The myth was also reimagined in a humorous way in the contendings of Horus and Set, written during the 20th dynasty. However, it was the ancient Greek and Roman writers who compiled the myth into a coherent whole and formulated a complete account of the details. Therefore, much of what we know today comes from the various insights of ancient Greek and Roman writers. Osiris was a widely worshipped god, and there were festivals held in his honor. The Fall of the Nile Festival and the Dajjad Pillar Festival celebrated the death and resurrection of Osiris. One of the most important rituals in these festivals was the planting of seeds and crops. Men and women would dig up several beds of soil and fill them with seeds. The growth and germination of these seeds symbolized the return of Osiris. In these festivals, long dramas were enacted and performed based on the myth of Osiris. These dramas would usually end with the rebirth and resurrection of the king. Sometimes people would make models of Osiris using temple-grown wheat and water to signify his rise from the dead. Osiris, the righteous king who died tragically and was resurrected thanks to the love of his wife Isis, is the quintessential figure of Egyptian kingship. The ancient Egyptian pharaohs claimed to be direct descendants of Osiris, and if not, they wanted to demonstrate that they were worthy of his throne. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more about other gods of Egyptian mythology, hit the like button and please consider subscribing to our channel. To receive regular updates on our videos and news, click the notification button, and as always, thank you very much for watching.
All right. Osiris. Okay. With that being said, let's go ahead and get ready
for our card reading for today.
Imagine booking a soul session, ordering crystals, and joining a live retreat from your phone. For too long, finding the right healers, the right products, the right community has meant endless searching across scattered corners of the internet. That changes now. The Sacred Kingdom has arrived, an online hub where a worldwide directory of holistic practitioners, readers, life guides, organic makers, musicians, a crystal shop, books, and more are all waiting for you. Book one-on-one sessions, order products, and discover Kingdom members serving locally in your area, all from your fingertips, wherever you are, whenever you're ready. Stay connected to upcoming events and retreats, both online and in person. Tap into a YouTube channel built for real conversation, hands-on holistic learning, and free giveaways. And there's more coming: courses, programs, a holistic recipe book, and the Sacred Kingdom Mystery School Academy mentorship. This is a space built on love, compassion, and the belief that conscious living should be accessible to all walks of life. Visit thesacredkingdom.com, and if you feel called to build from within, email Marcus ChristoLight at marcustut23@gmail.com about joining the Kingdom Council. The Kingdom is open.
The Kingdom is open, y'all. Reach out to. And it's going to be very, very nice. It's going to be very accessible, very efficient, and it's going to allow you guys to be able to tap in with our holistic practitioners in different areas around the world, as well as readers, sidekicks, organic product makers, as well as musicians, and many more that you guys will be able to connect with through our website. But you guys can go to our link page that we have already, and you guys can check it out through the QR code. And through the QR code, you can access my one-on-one services, the retreats that we have available, as well as all of our different individual services that we have available for you guys. So just check it out anytime that you feel. And we are here for you, here to serve, and very gladly sharing sacred space. All right, let's get some music going again. Get the Egypt vibe flowing. So we actually have two cards for our collective reading today. The first card is going to be Jar. Jar is number 30. And this is from the Book of the Dead Oracle. So I'm sure you guys may have heard of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Well, this is the Oracle deck for it. Pretty awesome. So Jar number 30 for our collective today is containment, preservation, and gut instinct. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the canopic jars were used to hold the mummified vital organs of the deceased. There were usually 4 jars in all, and they contained the lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines. The jars were guarded and protected by the sons of Horus. These jars were then put into the tomb with the mummy, so that the deceased had them ready for the afterlife and would be able to move to the Duat as a complete being. It was an elaborate ritual meant to honor both the deceased and the 4 sons of Horus at the same time. Oof. Something is stirring in the pit of my stomach after reading that. And what my gut is telling me is to share the perspective of what we just read compared to how it is that this Western United States world uses dead bodies and the organs. Now, I'm not going to get into the conspiratorial side of things, like, selling organs and eating organs and all these different things. I'm not going to get into all of that. But just from the standpoint of the mummification process, the difference here. We read that in ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, they honored the deceased by
holding their organs and taking their organs and bodily parts and honoring them, purifying them, placing them in jars, and then placing those jars in with the mummy. So think about how different that is. They're taking the deceased organs, putting them in jars, and then placing those jars with that individual's organs in with its mummified body, so that it can have all of its important parts that made up its being be with its spirit and with its being while moving into the afterlife. Now that makes me think, it makes me ponder on what kind of ritual, what kind of energy is behind the Western world when we are donating our organs, or when we're getting our body parts or baby fetal tissue and things of that nature is being taken by these institutions and by these corporations that we call medical systems and stuff like that. What are they truly spiritually and ritualistically doing with these body parts by not preserving them and putting them with the deceased body to honor its spiritual journey? So it just makes you really think, like, why is it that in Egypt, a place that was spiritually enriched and is one of the most successful civil comes to being a utopia, a balance and honor for everyone? Why is it that they did it that way then, but now today, the way we do burial, the way we do, these ceremonies of transitioning, it's very, very dark. It is very, very different than a lot of ancient civilizations, or even the ways of the Rastas and Rastafarians when it comes to the deceased. They celebrate when people decease because they know that they're going into a new life outside of this life of struggle and pain and things of that nature. It's like a graduation almost. Like you graduated from the earth plane, congratulations. You no longer have to go through this suffering, go through the ego, and go through all these different things that are only in this plane. Now you get to evolve from that as a spiritual being and go into your next form or your next embodiment. And they would celebrate that because they knew that. And that's what has been going on in this eternal life that we're in. So this is where becoming aware of Osiris comes in, is when you're aware of Osiris and what that means inside of you as a universal being, you're aware that you're just in one phase right now of your soul journey. You had phases before this physical life, and you have phases after this physical life. So what from your phases before this current life do you still need to reconcile, cut off loose ends, and release and integrate so that you can be karma free? And then what in the future of your next lifetimes are you wanting to plant the seeds of? Are you wanting to manifest or set up for yourself for your next incarnations through your free will intentions? And what does that look like for you now in this life, for you to prepare that dharmically and spiritually for yourself? And now we're going into the real ancient knowledge of eternal life. The Egyptians lived this way. The ancient Chinese lived this way with Tao. And I was honored to receive Tao from a true Taoist ceremony out in Ohio from a Tao master. And that ancient Chinese philosophy will really open your eyes and help you remember that, number one, the source is undescribable. Number two, that we are the source and connected to the source eternally. And number 3, that we are not just in this life only of the material life, but we are also creating karma and dharma through our actions and through our energy as we go through our daily progressions. And then we reap what we sow. They say technically we're living the things of the past right now, because the things that we did in the past were the causes to the effects that we are now experiencing. Which means that what we're doing now is the causes to the effects of what we're going to experience in the future from today. And it's a continuation of affecting the next steps of our journey, whether it's in this body or it's in the next spiritual incarnation. So it also says there is a need for containment for the purposes of self-preservation. So this is saying it's time to hone in on your vital energy. It's time to raise your kundalini. It's time to raise your sexual force and use it for a higher purpose, to co-create, to use it for inspiration and enlightenment. This can mean you need to guard your tongue or hold your secrets more closely. This is especially the case if the sarcophagus card is also present, which it's not. But as these two get, the jar can also suggest that it's time for you to contain your power and energy. Stop giving these things away, but guard them carefully. What does your gut tell you? Listen to your intuition. And what my gut's telling me too is to stop submitting so easily, to stop giving up consent of the way you envision life, the way that you embody life, and the way that you feel free or restricted in this life. And what I mean by that is follow your instincts. Stop trying to allow the TV, the media, the politics, the fears of the civilians, and all these different things, influence of family. Stop allowing that to dictate who you are, the decisions that you make for yourself, the way that you follow your passion and your path and you live your life. But generate that inside yourself. Build yourself up from within. Clear out the cobwebs, clear out the densities, and activate that clear chi flow. So you know and feel within your own intuition and instincts what you need to do in your daily life moving forward. As we are in a time where you can either be in complete chaos or you can choose the path of the straight and narrow. Let go of the left and right. Let go of the fears of the futures or the possibilities. Let go of holding on to limitations of the path because you made a mistake or that someone told you something about yourself that's not true. And get into that straight and narrow with yourself. We are co-creating in multi-dimensional layers. And it is a choice to be absorbed and embody nothing but polarity. You are the observer and experiencer of polarity, and you get to alchemize polarity. So listen to your gut, and that's your first card is the jar. Then the second card is amulet. Number 23, amulet. And we got the eye in there as the pearl. So 23, amulet. This is protection, good luck, and magic. So amulets were very popular with the ancient Egyptians. An amulet is a charm that has links to the animal kingdom. So things like the scarab charm, a rabbit's foot, feathers, and so on. In Egypt, amulets were made for all budgets, so many people would have carry one or two. They were usually worn as a protective symbol, but could also be imbued with magic for a specific purpose, such as love charms or prosperity amulets. This card is an amulet in itself, and when it shows up in a reading, it offers the gifts of protection and good fortune. It suggests a time of lucky breaks, opportunity, and chance encounters, which are all working for your highest good. This card foretells happy windfalls too, particularly if the riches or pyramid cards are also present. However, if the amulet is the only positive card in a reading, then it is the cautioning you to protect yourself from ill wishes of others. Pay heed to this warning. Be careful who you trust, protect your own interests, and remain strong boundaries. Wow. Beautiful way to dive into the oracle today. We have jar. Acknowledging where we're giving away our power. Being okay with preservation of our vital energy and creative energy force. Discerning where we are giving our energy cords. And releasing and clearing the cobwebs of what is causing distortion, density, and lack in our chi flow. Being mindful of the ways that we're giving away our power to the system and embracing more of self-empowerment and living in our present moment with ourself and spirit as our governing force. No need to even continue to follow the timelines in the media, propaganda, the liars, but to follow your own intuition and remember to trust that as the guiding force of your life. And then we have the amulet. Wear your spiritual symbols that help you feel the best and help remind you of this journey of who you are. Whether it's a spirit animal, different type of symbol, esoteric symbol, colors, various different things that you may wear or have around you to help reflect back to you the true path of who you are and why you're here at this purpose. There's your two cards, jar and amulet, on this Osiris episode. Again, you guys can get this oracle online or wherever you can find it, Egyptian Book of the Dead oracle. And I also highly suggest reading the text of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is originally called the Book of Coming Forth by Day, Per M. Heru. And that is the edition that I recommend getting, is the Per M. Heru, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. There's many versions out there. Alrighty. Wow. Feel free to put how you feel in the chat or comments after that. If you want to add anything, you are more than welcome to as well. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get ready for our closing. And in our closing, we're going to do a nice 5-minute Osiris meditation to help embody the divine masculine energy within our being. So go ahead and get yourself ready. Grab any green crystals if you would like, or maybe even like an amethyst for transmutation. You can also use a black stone like hematite, obsidian, or onyx for that releasing, fertility, and strengthening. And then you can do a combination, of course. Then I'll get ready. Feel free to burn some sage or Palo Santo, light an incense, and just allow yourself to get relaxed. Relax your shoulders. If you're sitting, have your spine straight. Relax the feet, fingers, the jaw, and just make sure you're breathing consciously and breathing deeply and patiently through your body as you feel the presence and the love and the unconditional force of the green man, Osiris. All right, we'll be back in 44 seconds.
Welcome. In this meditation, we step into the mystery of Osiris, not as a distant god, but as an awakened form within ourselves. This is not role play or performance. It is the recognition that the qualities of Osiris, renewal, sovereignty, eternal life, are already within you. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Let your breath become calm and steady. As you breathe, sense yourself in the temple of eternity. The air is still. The waters of the Nile flow unseen. Above you, the gentle presence of Isis, guiding with love. At your side, Nephthys, guardian of passage. They stand with you, just as they stood with Osiris. In their presence, you are safe to awaken. Now, imagine before you the form of Osiris. His skin is the green of renewal. He holds the crook and the flail, signs of inner sovereignty. He sits upon the throne of silence, radiant and eternal. With each breath, Osiris draws closer. With each breath, his form dissolves into light, and that light enters you. And say within, I am Osiris. I have gone forth and returned. I live forever. Feel Osiris's qualities as your own. Your body is whole, renewed, unbroken. Your heart is light, free, eternal. The crook and flail rest in your hands, not symbols of power over others, but of sovereignty over yourself. You are Osiris, the one who has descended, the one who has risen, who lives forever. To one side of you, Isis places her arms around you in protection, love, devotion, magic. On the other side, Nephthys also places her arms around you in protection, silence, passage, mystery. Together, they complete you, masculine and feminine, life and death, wholeness and renewal, all within you. Your heart shines like the morning sun. You are not separate from Osiris. You are not separate from the eternal. Let the image dissolve into radiant space and golden light, and rest in the stillness beyond form. And when you are ready, bring your awareness back to your breath. Carry the light of Osiris within you into your day. May you walk in renewal. May you live forever in truth.